Part 225. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2245. Although Joe Man and the others brought a lot of luggage, the heavy rain really didn't expect that there were fabrics and gold and silver jewelry in it. They just assumed that they were all things they would use to live their lives. Understood. At this time, the people who were talked about by the heavy rain were stationed not far away from the town. The night in the desert was a little cold. Jing Kuyan took a sip of strong wine and stood on the sand to watch the lights in the distance. Ergo added a piece of firewood to the fire, clapped his hands and walked to his side, also staring at the place, and asked, "Do you suspect they are there?" Jing Kuyan took another sip of wine, trying to suppress the fire in his heart, but found that he seemed to be getting more and more angry. He squeezed the jug in his hand, and said with a blank face, "I was thinking all the way along the way, where did they miss it, and I only remembered when I returned to the desert inn, we were in a hurry to go there. To chase them, I didn't spend the night in the desert inn when I walked this way, and I didn't enter this town, but went straight to the fast horse to chase. The people at the desert inn said they entered the desert, and they didn't look back or go out. Then the route we were chasing was right. There were no traces of them along the way. That only means that we walked in front of them." Every time he thought of this, he felt the same remorse in his heart. At that time, as long as he entered the town, he might find them. Ergo also had this suspicion, but are they still in the town now? Jing Kuyan said, "Whether you are there or not, as long as you can get their information." He said, "I don't believe they can disappear out of thin air. As long as you know when they left, you can roughly infer where they are now, and I'm not afraid to find them." He moved his fingers, looked at the scattered lights in the distance and said, "Actually, it's best if they're not in the town. The people in there are not easy to mess with. Brother, the cake is ready." Jing Kuyan then turned back to eat dinner, and after he turned around, a sand pile in the distance moved quietly, and the two men smeared and quietly returned to the town to report. "It's far away, so I can't see clearly, but we listened carefully. There were a lot of people, and there were probably dozens of horses, not a single car, and no cargo on them. Not to be trifled." The mayor drank a bowl of milk tea and frowned. "Why did the bandits come to us? Why, they want to rob us." The investigators were not quite sure, and said, "It's hard to live outside, so you're taking risks." The mayor glanced at him and said, "Go and inform the brothers that they will meet at the town entrance tomorrow morning, and pick 2 more teams to guard outside tonight. If they approach, they will immediately warn you." "Yes." Jing Kuyan knew the origin of this town, and also knew that the person in charge of the town was his colleague, so he didn't do anything to make people misunderstood. "Go into town and have breakfast before leaving." The news spread to the mayor layer by layer. The mayor pouted, who believed that they were just here for breakfast. However, the mayor still let people in. "Just ask them to come and order food for 3 people, and we'll send them out when we're ready. There is enough to say for 3 people. Jing Kui, who originally wanted to find someone to inquire about the situation after entering the town, settled down for a while, but he couldn't afford the time, so he took out a piece of silver and placed it on the table, ordered a bunch of worthless breakfast, and said, "Brother Wu, little brother, I want to ask you something." The mayor glanced at the silver ingot that was pushed in front of him, smiled and said, "It's easy to say, it's easy to say, the distinguished guest is here, just ask if you have any questions, and I will definitely answer if I can." Jing Kuyan asked, "Did a convoy of more than 100 people come to the town some time ago, not a caravan, but a court official?" He paused and said, "But there was a small businessman among them." The mayor was slightly surprised, but he tilted his head and looked at the housekeeper calmly. "Is there such a team? I have not cared about the town's affairs for a long time, and I really don't know for a while. I am here. Let someone check it out, But what are you asking about this? He said, this is a person from the Yamen. If something happens outside, if it affects us. Brother Wu, don't worry, you won't be affected by this matter. This is our grievance and grievance with them. The mayor smiled, turned the teacup in his hand and asked, they did something wrong with you? Jin Kuyan said with a gloomy face, they stole something from me, and I have to get it back. The mayor twitched the corners of his mouth. He lied to the ghost. If other officers and soldiers were possible, how could Joe Man's children who love to enjoy and escape risk taking the risk of robbing a group of horse thieves? I'm afraid that they have something that Jin Kuyan likes, so they took so much trouble to find someone. The mayor pondered for a while, and according to the schedule, now that people arrived in Shazhu early, they should have returned halfway in the heavy rain, right? The mayor took a sip of tea, and he knew it. So when the housekeeper came back from outside and whispered a bunch of nonsense in his ear, he said to Jin Kuyan with a deep expression, there are really such a group of people, but they have already left. Jin Kuyan asked quickly, how long have they been gone? The mayor said with a smile, it's been a long time. They only stopped here for 2 days. After careful calculation, they have been gone for 30 or so days. I heard that they are going to the western regions. They should be almost done by now, right? Jin Kuyan was startled, how is this possible? We chased after them all the way, but didn't see them. The mayor drank all the tea in the cup and said indifferently, doesn't that mean that they have gone far? I said, brother, the time difference between you is too long. In the past 30 days, the wind and sand in the desert are early. Wipe all the traces clean, if it's not something special, there's really no need to look for it, or are you planning to chase it to the western regions? Jin Kuyan's eyes were cold, and he clenched his fists and said, I was originally in the western regions, and there is nothing impossible. The mayor's brows twitched slightly, and then he remembered and asked, by the way, where is my brother from? Jin Kuyan twitched the corners of his mouth and said, Brother Wu, don't worry, my people and the site are outside the gate, and I won't grab the site with you. The mayor, don't worry about it, okay. Those people should have left the customs by now, right? It's unfortunate enough, although it has nothing to do with him. The mayor pondered for a while and felt that he might lose a long-term partner, especially Joe Man, but he promised him that when he came back from the western regions, he would go back to the town to see him, and maybe he would be able to leave a few more prescriptions at that time. Thinking of this, the mayor didn't bother to deal with him anymore, and waved his hand, the person you are looking for has gone away, so I will not keep my brother. There are many young people in the town, all of them are young and vigorous guys, I am afraid of them. Something happened together. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2246. Jin Kuyan twitched the corners of his mouth, expressing his understanding, got up and left, and the housekeeper immediately sent the breakfast they ordered out of town. When they were far away, the butler asked, Master, will they encounter the heavy rain coming back? The mayor said, just touch it, they are not stupid in the heavy rain. These people are just like us when they see it. The convoy's affairs will definitely not be exposed. Now the important thing is whether to send someone to warn them. The mayor was a little annoyed, go, we'll have to pay for it, don't go, I feel a little bit sorry for it, and I'm thinking of staying in the town for a while after they come back. How many people have Joe Man and the others healed in 20 days? The mayor hesitated for a breakfast, but in the end he gave a sigh and ordered, choose 3 smart ones, let them bring their drinking water and leave now, don't leave the desert, detour to Suzhou to chase them quickly. He said, they have either left the customs now or are still in the city of Shazhu. Let people go directly to the Yamen to ask. If they leave, they will go out and chase after them, and they will come back after the news is delivered to them. The housekeeper asked, Didn't they miss the heavy rain and the others when they walked from Suzhou? If you miss it, you miss it, the mayor said. These people are not stupid. If they found your traces, wouldn't they all be exposed? It's useless to meet the heavy rain and the others. The housekeeper laughed and said, little one thought that the master wanted De Yu and the others to chase after them to protect them. The mayor hummed and said, didn't you listen to him? His people are outside the gate, and there are only 20 of them in the heavy rain. Are you going to send them to be melons? He said, they are different from those of us who are fighting for territory. They are officials, and we don't need to save them. With the identities of those young masters and young ladies, if you know that someone is going to rob them, many people want to protect them. Bai Shan handed the letter to a guard and told him, hurry up. After sending it to Shazhu, you will come back with letters from General Meng and Governor He. We will be waiting for you at the entrance to the desert. The guard should step down. The postmaster drove the carriage over, and the guards dragged out 2 people who were tied up very tightly and threw them into the carriage. Originally, Bai Shan wanted to say whether he should make the person dizzy so he could transport him, but seeing that the person was so pale that he could barely stand, and some blood could still be seen on his clothes, he stopped talking. However, Nai Kenjun took the initiative to say, it's safer to make people faint. Their people don't know where they are. What if they make a noise on the road and people notice it? In fact, they can stun people directly, but dizziness is risky, and people will be shot to death if they are not careful, so it seems that medicine will be better. Man Bao turned his head and instructed Zhou Liru. Zhou Liru went up and took a medicine bag and put it directly in front of their noses for them to smell. After a while, the 2 of them rolled their eyes and fainted. She put the medicine bag in a paper bag and sealed it, and handed it over to the guard. If you wake up, just cover them with a cover. The medicine is very effective, so don't cover it for too long. Will do. The guard took it in surprise and nodded in response. 1 guard and 2 soldiers, plus the postman driving the carriage, the 4 of them set off in the morning light. When the guard saw that the postmaster had walked for a while and was still struggling, he said, this is meritorious service, so you are still in trouble. The postmaster said, oh, you are not from here and don't know that the horse thieves outside the customs for the past 6 months are just like the grasshoppers after the great drought, but they are rampant. You are a hero, and the little family is still here. Don't be too bold. The guard said, what's the matter? We are quietly entering the city, the prefect and General Meng will remember your credit, just don't go out for the time being. If you are still not at ease, go back and send your family to the city. Go, I don't believe those horse thieves have the guts to enter the city. The postmaster smiled and said, of course they dare not enter the city, but is it easy to make a living in the city? The guard smiled and said, you should have said it earlier. Our young master has a good heart. If he knew, he would have arranged it for you. The postman smiled. In fact, when he decided to take this credit, he thought about it. When he came back, he would let the mother-in-law and the children go back to their parents' house to live for a while. Anyway, the post station was not very busy, and it would be possible without them. Get busy. Bai Shan and the others were eating breakfast while watching people pack their things. There were not enough tables and stools, so the heavy rain squatted next to them to eat, and he still didn't understand, why send people back to Shazhu city, keep them in their hands, and maybe they can threaten 1 or 2 when they find them. Bai Shan asked, if I threaten the mayor with your life, will the mayor let us go? De Yu said, that must not be the case. I am alone. There are so many brothers behind our boss. How can I explain to the brothers if I let go of your fat sheep? Bai Shan nodded, that's right, the mayor doesn't know it, how can they? He said, we are not a caravan, we are officials. Since we found out that the bandits want to harm us, we must report to the officials. The heavy rain was puzzled, but we are about to enter the desert. There are not many people in it, and there are no officials and officials. They can't send an army from Shazhu city to follow you, right? Bai Shandao, that's not our business, it's their business. Anyway, I told them, if they don't do anything, if something happens to us, they won't be able to escape if the court asks about the crime. Heavy rain, so rogue. It is naturally impossible for Bai Shan to be such a rogue, but not many people know about this matter. After thinking for a while, De Yu decided not to violate the contract. Being scared away like this, it seemed that they were too embarrassed. After breakfast, everyone was ready to set off. Because they thought about waiting for them, they moved slowly today. It would take 2 days for them to come and go. No hurry at all. Fu Fu didn't expect Bai Shan and the others to treat the two of them like this. Until he woke up in the dungeon, he was still a little confused. When their guards saw that they were awake, they immediately dragged them out to Inspector He and General Meng to see them. Inspector He and General Meng looked at them as strange. General Meng had had so many dealings with horse thieves and bandits in and outside the customs. It was the first time I had seen such a horse thief who sent people into the convoy before making a move. This kind of information only indicates 2 points. Either they are few in number, but have a big appetite, and they want to cooperate with each other, or their purpose is not just to rob things, and such a smart person must have a big plan. No matter which one it is, such horse thieves have decided that they cannot exist, otherwise their trade routes will not be peaceful in the future. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2247. Inspector He needed the previous caravans to increase taxes and political achievements, and General Meng also needed to obtain military funds, so even without Bai Shan's letter, the two could not allow such a gang of horse thieves to exist. The two of them stared at the rich two together, especially General Meng, who killed countless enemies and guarded the border for many years. His aura and suffocation were far from comparable to Nai Kenjun and Bai Shan, so he didn't say a word. He couldn't help but be rich. Frightened, I couldn't help but shiver slightly. General Meng sat with a golden sword and listened to Inspector He's questioning. Man Bao and the others walked slowly to a small town. It was a fairly prosperous town, but it was grey, and their town was not as beautiful as it was raining heavily. Heavy Rain said, "It's natural, we dare not say anything else in our town. Feng Shui is absolutely good. Not only can we grow melons, fruits, barley, but also wheat. Our elder brother said that if the weather is good in the future, we will also free up some land to try to grow rice." Thinking of the white rice they had eaten with Zhou Man during this period, De Yu licked his lips. Rice is delicious. Man Bao also thought the rice was delicious, but suddenly she was a little hungry. She turned her head and said to Bai Shan, "I want to eat a ball." Bai Shan smiled and said, "When I find a place to live, Mrs. He will make it for you." De Yu immediately asked, "What is a rice ball?" "A nigiri is rice that is kneaded into a ball." Heavy Rain looked suspicious. "It's all rice, what's the difference between kneading it and not kneading it?" Seeing that they didn't tell him, he snorted, "If you don't tell me, I'll ask Mrs. He." Man Bao said, "Don't scare people, rice balls are rice balls dipped in some salt, what's the difference?" Heavy Rain didn't say go to Mrs. He. Sister He is the only person in the town who is willing to follow them, but she is very afraid of them in the heavy rain. It is said that she followed the concubine of the merchants who passed by the town, but when they arrived in the town, the merchants took a fancy to a gem, and it was only money. It was a little short, so I resold Sister He to people in the town. That person's family was also well off, but his life was short. Sister He died of illness within 5 years of entering the house. She did not give birth to a child or half a daughter. Give her a place to live, but she needs to earn food and drink. Sister, he has some cooking skills, and she can barely survive in the small town by doing laundry, but she has always wanted to go back to the Central Plains, but going back to the Central Plains requires a lot of money even if she follows the passing merchants. Toll. She has no money. She also thought of other ways, but for 8 years, she couldn't believe what she was willing to take with her, and she didn't want to take her if she reluctantly believed it. Joe Man and the others were the only ones she completely believed in so far, so Steward Lee just showed a little interest, saying that they needed a cook in the team, and she immediately recommended herself. It's just that she was still a little afraid of people coming out of the town, especially those in the mayor's mansion like Heavy Rain. She avoided people when she could avoid them. Man Bao could also see her fear, so he didn't let Da Yu and the others scare her. There are inns in the town, but they are not very big, so many of them need to live in 3 inns, and the houses here are all 1-story, not 2-story, and the doors and windows are very small. Steward Lee took the 2 people to visit the whole town first, and then settled on a place to live, 3 inns next to each other. This shows how small this town is, a little smaller than Da Yu's town, but it is indeed prosperous, with a lot of people inside. The stalls on both sides of the road are full of things, and there are many customers picking things. Here, Man Bao and the others finally saw the caravan. It's just that these caravans seem to have come from other places to enter the customs. There are also people who look like Han people, but more of them are people from the western regions with high nose and deep eyes. That's why Man Bao and the others were so conspicuous when they appeared in the town, and many people came to see them. Originally, this town was greeted and sent, and all kinds of people were not uncommon. It shouldn't be so strange, but Joe Man and the others were not merchants at first sight, so everyone couldn't help but pay more attention. Man Bao and the others also looked back curiously. There are also many people from outside the capital in the capital. Not to mention, there are students with different looks in the Imperial Physician Office, but there are so many people who look different and have such obvious characteristics. It was the first time she saw each other together. Since people are looking at her, she will look back generously. Everyone is curious, so there is no such thing as polite or impolite. When watching people, I took a look at the things on the booth, and Man Bao found that this was a large-scale exchange of goods. Most people are bartering, and only a few will buy things with silver or gold. The most popular items on the stalls are furs and fabrics, as well as china and various grains, of which beans are the most common. Soybeans, black beans, red beans, all kinds of beans. Man Bao looked around, then put away his curious eyes, and went into the inn under the guidance of Steward Lee. Li Guanqi said, "We arrived early, and made a small estimate of the time. We will wait another day tomorrow. They should be able to catch up in the evening, and we can leave early in the morning." Bai Shan nodded and said, "Prepare more water, we'll go see the camels tomorrow." Yes. There are camels in the town, and the scale is not small. Keek likes this creature that has no record. Man Bao also liked it, and she could earn a lot of points by including this kind of thing, so she personally picked it up, and Keek scanned it, and she could barely see which one was stronger by comparison. So Man Bao picked 6 camels under his guidance. The reason why he did not continue was because Li Guanqi whispered that it was enough, and any more would be too expensive. Man Bao touched one of the camels and said, "We will sell it when we return from the western regions." The shopkeeper on the side smiled and said, "Miss, you can come to us when you want to sell camels, and we will give you a reasonable price." Man Bao asked, "Can you buy it back at the original price?" The shopkeeper's face was slightly stiff, and he said with a smile, "It's naturally based on its quality." What do they earn by taking back the original price? The Heavy Rain on the side also likes camels, but it is a pity that the town is poor, and the eldest brother is unwilling to do this business, saying that it is too expensive, and it is useless to sell it. He rolled his eyes and said to Joe Man, "You can take it back to our town and sell it to us." Man Bao glanced at him and said, "Can you charge the original price?" Before the heavy rain could answer, Bai Shan had already said, "We'll talk about this later. We haven't gotten to the place yet, so why are we always thinking about what's going to happen after we come back?" The shopkeeper on the side couldn't help it and said, "If the camel is not damaged, we can talk about the price again." Man Bao reacted at this moment, nodded to him and said, "We'll talk about this when we get back. See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2248. Man Bao and the others waited in the town for a day, and the guards quickly chased after him. They also brought back General Meng's letter. After Bai Shan and the others saw it, they put it away, packed their bags, and went into the desert the next day. Man Bao and the others have camels. In addition to putting some heavy goods, they also climbed up and sat for a while out of curiosity, and then began to feel distressed. It's so heavy, are they tired? There doesn't seem to be a lot of food for them. Heavy Rain rode a horse and walked aside, rolled his eyes and said, "They are so big, what's the tiring of the camels?" However, Man Bao and the others refused to sit, so they got off the camel and continued to ride. After all, the horse only took one of them, but there was still a lot of cargo hanging on both sides of the camel. The group went west at a slow pace. They were very careful along the way. After all, there was a group of horse thieves staring at them in the dark. Although Nikenjun had been sending scouts to check back and forth, no one was found to be following him. Man Bao spent points for Keek to scan it, but no one was found, so they could only speculate that those people were not near them, at least not near them. It's a pity that the information is not easy to circulate, otherwise you can ask if General Meng has asked something from the mouths of those two people. Alas, Teacher Mo and the others can still communicate with her at any time across time and space, but it is only difficult for them to communicate after a few days' journey. Man Bao felt that the sun was getting stronger, so he dismounted and entered the carriage. The others also changed to the carriage, ate some tea and started talking while looking at the yellow sand outside. The heavy rain didn't know why they were able to talk so much, it seemed like they couldn't finish talking every day. However, when walking in the desert, the most feared thing is loneliness, besides lack of water, and they are not lonely anymore. The marching team lost contact with the outside world. Not only did Jingkuyan and others who rushed from the desert to Shazhu city again couldn't find their trace, but also Bader, who arrived in Shazhu city a day earlier than Jingkuyan and the others, could not find their trace. As soon as the three of them arrived in Shazhu city, they first went to a restaurant familiar with their town to inquire about the situation. They originally wanted to ask if they knew Joe Man and the others, and if they knew they were still in the city. If you're not there, when is the best time to go, so that they don't have to go to the yamen? Although the mayor said that they did a good deed this time, they could ask generously, but thieves are afraid of the government. Of course, they are not afraid, they just don't want to see those officers and soldiers, and they are not willing to say hello to them, so why go to the government when they can get news at the restaurant? As soon as they entered, the shopkeeper of the restaurant said, "You really came to find someone, they left in heavy rain." Bader froze for a moment and said, "I know they're gone, they should have returned to the town by now. Shopkeeper, do you know the convoy they sent into the city in the heavy rain? Are they still in the city?" The shopkeeper looked at him inexplicably. "What are you talking about? I mean, they went with the convoy in the heavy rain, not saying that they are going back to your town." He said that they took the order from the convoy and wanted to send them to the western regions, so they didn't. I know how much they charged, but I see how happy they are, it should be a lot. All three of Bader were stunned. Heavy rain actually followed Imperial Dr. Joe and the others. It took Bader almost an hour to figure out this matter. Not only did he know when they left, but he also knew that Heavy Rain had bought a lot of things from Shazhu city to take to the western regions to sell. It is said that before the Heavy Rain left, he declared that when he returned from the western regions, he would go to Suzhou or Liangzhou to marry a Chinese wife, and he should have enough money. The other two partners looked at Bader together. What should I do? Bader wiped his face. Kurban, you go back and tell the mayor, we too are going to chase them, there are wolves chasing them, we must find them before they catch up. But in fact, there was no need for anyone to go back to notify the mayor and also notice the anomaly, because there was no news of the Heavy Rain that he thought should be returned to the town. If it was a delay on the road, it would be fine if he arrived 2 or 3 days later than he expected, but it's been 7 or 8 days, why hasn't anyone been seen? The mayor's back stiffened when he thought of the time Joe Man and the others stayed in his town. It won't be self-defeating, they are still staying somewhere in the desert, right? The housekeeper said, impossible, there are not many people in this desert, what's the fun? Although there is no oasis as big as their small town, it does not mean that there is no oasis. There is still water and people living in other places. Who knows if Joe Man will stay like staying in a small town? The mayor pondered, and couldn't sit still, and said, hello brothers, divide into 3 teams to go out to find people. Joe Man and the others don't matter, we have brother number 20 inside, and we are just running into. The mayor suddenly paused, then leaned back on the chair, rubbing his chin and thinking, if you really meet them, you shouldn't be afraid. They are only 70 or 80 people. Joe Man and the others have about 100 people. Except for the dozen or 20 chickens without ties, everyone else should have seen blood on the edge of the knife, plus the Heavy Rain and them. The housekeeper smiled and said, sure. The mayor nodded, as long as they don't have anyone else, it's safe. So the mayor took back the order he had just issued, and continued to retire in the town and wait for the brothers to return. At this time, the person who was going to deliver the letter to the mayor hid at the city gate of Shazhu and watched Jin Kuyan and the others enter the city. Then he pulled his horse out of the city quietly, and took the desert road back with drinking water. Jin Kuyan and the others knew as soon as they entered the city, they said it was a caravan, but they didn't even have a car, that is, each horse brought something. The grain is something like wheat bran, but they pay the city tax as cloth. There are 79 people in total, all of them with weapons. As soon as they entered the city, they found an inn to live in, and they kept looking for someone to keep an eye on them. After they stayed, one of them came to them, and they seemed to know each other very well. In my humble opinion, they should be the people Zhou Tai said. General Meng frowned and asked, they didn't ask for news. No, I'm buying water now, and some people are going to the pass to get documents. It seems that they will be leaving tomorrow. General, do you want to detain their documents and take them for questioning? General Meng pondered for a moment, then shook his head slightly, don't give them the documents first, check to see if they are from inside the customs, or from outside the customs, and let Governor he send someone to check their goods. Will you scare the snake? At the end of the month, book friends who still have monthly tickets in hand, look at me, roll and ask for monthly tickets. Let me tell you a piece of good news, when I enter December, the full treasure will explode, pay off the debt a little, so let more monthly passes hit me. The next chapter is around 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2249. What's this called? I haven't let them see the 2 people in the prison. The 2 of them were also stubborn. Although they confessed a lot, the key thing was that they refused to say a word. They only revealed some news when they couldn't bear it. General Meng knocked on the table and said, the investigation of this kind of thing is handed over to He Shishi, he will determine the person, we are only responsible for sending troops. The general will understand and leave. From the people left behind by Fu, Jin Kuyan finally got news from Zhou Man and the others, those who left the city 9 days ago, I heard that they were going to the western regions, but I couldn't find out the specific route. Brother Fu followed them out of the city, and he brought a few pibu, said he would try to get in with them. Jinkuyan, who made 2 extra trips, smashed the table angrily. Let's go after him. He sneered, outside the customs is my territory. Even if we can't catch up, the rich will have the opportunity to go back and transfer our people. If their motorcade is slow, we will surely catch up. Jinkuyan calculated in his heart that they had been running back and forth for more than a month. Zhou Man and the others only left the city 9 days ahead of them, and it was only 10 days even today, so they would definitely be able to catch up with them. Just after he made up his mind, there was a commotion in the courtyard of the inn. Jinkuyan raised his head. Ergo had already taken the initiative to go to the window and look down. He turned his head and said, "There are officers and soldiers to check our horses." Jinkuyan got up and said angrily, "This is the grassland, not their central plains. You have to keep a book to buy a horse. What do they want to do?" Ergo quickly stopped him, "This is still in the city, don't be impulsive. Shazhu is different from other cities. This is an important border town. Except for the Yumen Pass, they have no way to get out. Once they kill people in the city, they will not be able to get out." Urge said, "You wait here, I'll go down and deal with it." But Ergo was also very difficult to deal with. There was a full hour of trouble, and in the end Ergo gave him 2 silver coins before sending him away. After the scolding Yaman went out, they went back to the governor's mansion with a nasty face. They immediately put away the arrogance on their faces and handed over the money to the governor. Inspector, he asked, "How?" "They came from outside the customs. They said they were visiting relatives, and they exchanged some goods by the way, but the younger ones forcibly dismantled 3 bags, one of which was packed with noodles, and the other 2 were packed with wheat bran. They say it's food for horses, but it's small. Those bags that say they are filled with cloth are mostly wheat bran." The one at the head was called Jinkuyan, but he didn't show up. The one who came down was a man named Ergo. There was no problem with his way, but the young man mentioned a rich name to them, saying that when he was drinking with him, the other party was very friendly. Generous, unlike other people who are becoming more and more stingy now. Narg gave the small 2 silver coins, and also implied that they knew the rich and were friends of the rich. In other words, is it them? The Yaman thought about it and said, "Even if it's not them, they're not good people. They have a bloody aura about them." Inspector, he understood and asked people to retreat. Jinkuyan and Ergo were both afraid of long nights and dreams, so they took people out of the city the next day after they got the customs clearance documents in the evening. The official road outside Shazhu city is very spacious, with green hills on both sides. As soon as they exited the customs, they galloped their horses. At first glance, there was no one on the entire official road, and a few people let go of their horses to run. Suddenly the horse's hoof fell, and the person on the horse flew out. The person who reacted quickly immediately hugged his head. When he fell to the ground, he didn't break his neck, but the horse and the person behind were blocked by the fallen horse. When trampled by a chaotic horse. The scene was chaotic. Jinkuyan shouted loudly, and firstly controlled the horse to cross the horse that was lying on the ground. Then he pulled out his sword and instructed everyone to calm down. The control horse wanted to hide to the side, and the green hills on both sides appeared in unison. Soldiers, bows, and arrows in condescending hands aimed at them. Dozens of horses came out of the forest to stand in front of them. When General Men waved his hand, 2 people were thrown out of the team. He sneered and asked, "Wealthy, are you talking about them?" The team that barely managed to control the horses was full of anger, and some people couldn't help shouting angrily, "Rich, you betray us." Fufu, who was thrown to the ground, was pale and bloodless. Jinkuyan's face changed, and he shouted, "Don't talk nonsense, Rich won't betray us." But what went wrong? After confirming their identities, General Meng sneered, flicked his spear, and pointed straight forward, "Release the arrow." The army who came prepared and was still in ambush confronted the unprepared horse thieves. What is there to say? It was a one-sided massacre. Ergo cut off the flying arrow and shouted to Jin Kuyan, "Go, rush out, hurry." Jin Kuyan took the 20 or 30 people who could handle it and rushed forward, and General Meng led the people to meet him. A group of 80 horse thieves was not enough for his father to come in person. Then Jin Kuyan and Urge escaped with 3 wounded people. General Meng chased them for most of the day. Seeing that it was getting dark, the accompanying guards immediately stopped him. "Major General, we can't chase anymore, we have to go back." City report. The little General Meng hated and asked, "How can I let the bandit leader go?" "Then what can you do?" Who knew that Jin Kuyan could be 1 to 10? General Meng was so angry that he waved his gun fiercely and had to go back and apologize to his father. General Meng frowned, "You brought 300 people, and half of them brought bows and arrows, and even ambush in advance, you can't catch people." General Meng knelt on the ground and bowed his head and said, "It's my son who is not good at martial arts, please punish him." The general on the side hurriedly explained, "General, that Jin Kuyan is very brave, and the humble post only took him a knife, you see." General Meng glanced at his tiger's mouth and found that it was a little cracked, and the bones should have been injured, so he frowned slightly. The general hurriedly said, "Not only can the Major General catch his knife, but it is already very powerful to injure the opponent." General Meng snorted coldly, and said to General Meng, "You will receive the punishment yourself." General Meng bowed his head and got up to go. General Meng then asked the side general, "How many have been captured?" "There are 26 caught, and I don't know how many are still alive." "Jin Kuyan," General Meng frowned, "Jin? This name sounds familiar. I remember that Bazwo used to have a slave general named Kuyan. He was very brave. The left leader general reminded me before, but later Bazwo had a slave general named Kuyan. Zhou went to Huiye and was killed, and his men also descended and scattered. Did they go outside the customs to be a horse thief?" The general thought for a while. "It's really possible that it's him. The knife in his hand is very good, so it's not something that ordinary horse thieves can beat." "General, the man has already run away, do we still have to chase?" "Ask for a monthly pass, S.A. Lang, hey yo. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2250. General Meng hesitated. He had to pacify the bandits and horse thieves in the pass first, and then he could focus on matters outside the pass. But thinking of Yin or their identities gave him a little headache again. If you don't know it, forget it, but if you know it, you can't really sit idly by. So he thought for a while and said, "First treat the people who are still alive, then interrogate them, and ask them to find out their old nest. If it is not too far away, then they will be sent to lead troops to slaughter their old nest." The general responded with a yes. General Meng went to get a beating, and when he limped back, he heard that his father was still thinking about chasing people, so he immediately covered his butt and went to his father. How could he not report for such a humiliation? He had to go after him. Not only he had to go after him, but he had to go after him himself. In the end, General Meng was sprayed out of the house. He said, "I don't know the heights of the stinky boy. Do you think it is easy to fight in the desert? Do you know the way? Can you find water or drink horse urine?" At this time, the fully prepared Manbao group also felt the cruelty in the desert, because their water was running out. Obviously enough drinking water has been prepared, but the consumption in the desert is still higher than their estimates. Manbao has begun to save water subconsciously. It seems that next time Keek will help her to pack a little water. What to wear? You can't just take a jar for no reason, just buy it in the mall. Manbao thought wildly, because she was the only one in the carriage. Her consciousness sank into the mall for a little bit, and suddenly remembered, since you can buy storage in the mall, why can't you buy water? Manbao's eyes lit up, he immediately entered water in the mall, and many pages appeared, but it didn't seem to be drinking, nor was it drinking, but it looked different from normal water. Manbao poked, and after thinking about it, he entered natural water. After several pages came out, Manbao glanced at the title, 20 points per ton of water. Her eyes suddenly lit up. Keek couldn't help reminding her, doesn't the host look at the distance and cost of express delivery? Manbao then looked at the line of small characters marked below, she. Manbao just lay on the couch and didn't move. Sure enough, there is no pie in the world. Manbao poked in the mall and finally bought a 20-liter bottle of water. Although the price was also 20 points, the transportation cost was not very high. It only cost 20 points, which was the same price as the water. I don't even need to buy a container anymore, it's already packaged when it's delivered. Manbao took off the bamboo tube hanging on the carriage, poked water from the bamboo tube, stuck his head out, and handed the water to Daji. Daji, send it to Mr. Daji glanced at the bamboo tube in her hand and declined, Miss Man, there is still some water in the car, you should keep it yourself. Manbao shook his head, send it to Mr. You can drink less water, but you can't drink less water. Heavy Rain rode up from behind, stared at the bamboo tube and said, if you don't take it, I can take it. Daji took it, turned around and left, without even giving him a look. Manbao was lying at the window and talking to him, how long will there be an oasis? The Heavy Rain wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, it won't be long, I remember that there should be a ditch further ahead. At that time, we walked out of the town for about 10 days, and our walking speed was not slow. Today if it can't be there, it should be there tomorrow. As soon as these words came out, everyone was refreshed and accelerated. Mr. Zhuang took the bamboo tube full of treasures, only to pour a few sips of water into his bamboo tube, and hand over the rest to Daji. Daji walked around the team with the wooden barrel, and finally Bai Shan brought the bamboo tube back. Because of the hot weather, they hardly ride horses except in the morning and evening. Not only can they save a little effort, but they can also use less a little water. Bai Shan Kong immediately jumped into the car, got in and handed her the bamboo tube. Why did you give all your water to others? Manbao glanced at him, put away the bamboo tube, and excitedly said to Keek, one more tube. But Keek couldn't help her to unscrew the lid of the bamboo tube and pour water into it, so her excited command just reverberated in her mind, and then nothing happened. Manbao and Bai Shan stared at each other. Bai Shan glanced at her empty hand, and was already sitting and waiting, but seeing that she just stared at him with wide eyes, and he didn't make another move for a long time, he felt a little uneasy and asked in a low voice, Uncle Joe wants to whisper to you. Manbao's eyes were a little erratic, and he whispered, why don't you go to the carriage and wait for me? Bai Shan had no objection, so he respectfully sat on the carriage and helped her watch the wind by the way. The coachman didn't understand why the young master came out, his body was a little stiff, but he didn't dare to ask as he sat on the carriage, so he could only pat the horse's butt lightly and let it follow the carriage in front of him. Did the couple quarrel? I didn't hear the quarrel just now. Manbao went into the space to fetch water, and brought in the bamboo tube that Bai Shan brought in by the way. When he was full, he came out. She coughed lightly, and Bai Shan turned around and went in. Driver, it's really hard to understand. Manbao happily handed him the water, you can drink it directly, drink it quickly. Bai Shan opened it and glanced at it. It was full of clean water. He was slightly surprised. He raised his neck and took a big sip. He asked in a low voice, is Uncle Joe still here? Not anymore. Bai Shan wasn't so nervous anymore. He asked curiously, did Uncle Joe help us go to the front to find water? Man Bao sighed, no water was found around. She had already asked Keek to help see it, and Keek sympathetically didn't ask for her points, but just stopped by to take a look when scanning the recordable creatures. But there was no water, so she asked about the heavy rain. With experience in heavy rain, the scope of knowledge must be much larger than that of Keek. Hearing that, Bai Shan took a sip and said, next time, we'll prepare more water. Man Bao nodded, and also planned to go to the mall for a while to find water storage products. Water can't be bought, but they can replenish it here themselves. Man Bao handed the bamboo tube to Bai Shan. Yin, or what are they doing? Send this bamboo tube to them, he needs to drink more water. I'm pointing out Lu Huan's chess skills. Huh, Man Bao tilted his head slightly, because Keek said in her mind, find the water source, and go to the place 18 kilometers ahead to the left. Man Bao opened the curtain and looked out, and saw a winding road extending towards the front left. Obviously, this is the road they were going to take, so she looked at Bai Shan excitedly. She didn't need to say Bai Shan to understand what she meant, so she smiled and became happy. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2251. Man Bao rode on his horse to watch the scouts returning from the horse race, and asked happily, have you found water? Nai Kenjun and more than 100 people stared at him with bright eyes. The scouts were about to cry. Why did he come back to report the letter? He didn't want to come back, but he still had to say, no. Water. Man Bao expressed doubts, is there no water? Didn't you say there is a river in front of you? The heavy rain also came right away. Zan Mu looked at it, although the sand dunes always changed, but some places did not change. He felt that the dry and ugly tree in the distance was very familiar, so he said, just right in front, that river ditch is not very small, your eyes are so bad, you can't find it. The scout and Nai Shenjun said, sir, you will know when you see it, there is no water in it. Everyone had a bad feeling in their hearts, so they let the team speed up. Gradually descending the sand dunes, the dry old trees not far away became more and more obvious. Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at each other, kicked the horse's belly, and rushed to the front, intending to see it first. Seeing them run away, Bai Erlang immediately shouted, wait for me, I'm going to, then he ran after him. Nai Kenjun was also curious, and there was no one in the four fields, so he simply followed behind. When they reached the edge of a gully that was obviously a ravine, several people looked at a scout standing on the ground and were speechless for a while. The scout who ran after him immediately said, look, sir, that's it. This is a gully where it is obvious that water once flowed, because the gravel and soil below are not completely the same as the yellow sand next to it, and it has traces of water flowing and scouring. But now there is nothing. No, it was still there. The gravel and silt were still a little wet. The scout left behind took a knife and dug a hole the size of a head. Now there is a little water in it. The scout said naively, sir, although it is small, it is still a little bit, even if we don't drink it for the horses. Nai Kenjun was sad. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang were also sad and speechless. Man Bao almost burst into tears. Keek, is this the water you're talking about? Well, Keek saw that the host seemed to be really about to cry, so he said, if the host is not satisfied with the surface water, he can also use the groundwater. Man Bao's tears were brushed away, and he asked in his heart, where is the groundwater? The groundwater is naturally underground, but it is a matter of opinion as to how deep you need to dig. If you find a suitable place, you will come out after digging a few meters. But Keek obviously won't be embarrassed, so he pointed her to a place. Just as he was pointing, the convoy also arrived. Yin or the others got off the carriage, walked to their side and looked down at the gully together, also speechless. After looking at it, Mr. Zhuang looked up at the sky and said, "Let's stay here tonight, and let's discuss what to do. Everyone should get down." Man Bao said, "We can dig underground water." She said, "Didn't we ride horses to chase the place where the lake water disappeared when we were in the town? Didn't it mean that the last place it disappeared was underground? There should also be groundwater here." Everyone followed the gully and looked into the distance, while Bai Shan looked at the underground of the gully, squinted and asked, "Then you say, will there be groundwater under the gully?" "Naturally, there are, but according to Keek, the water here is deeper, and it is not as good as the other side." So after the team was stationed, the soldiers took their swords and went to dig holes in the gully. Just as the scout said, "If you dig, you can get a little water. If they can't drink it, they can give it to the horses and camels. In fact, they are really thirsty. You can drink it, but it's not up to that point yet." The sun didn't go down, but it wasn't that hot anymore. Man Bao put on his hat, took out his medicine hoe, and called friends, let's go find water." Mr. Zhuang and Nikanjun were counting the remaining drinking water, leaving them alone. The heavy rain led people to join in the fun, and when he saw them riding their horses towards the distance, he pulled his own horse to follow, and after crossing a dune to a valley, he took a hoe and started beating around. He couldn't help asking Daji, who was standing by, "You just follow, don't you help?" Daji stood idle and said, "Don't worry, we'll just protect their safety." Man Bao was very curious to open the yellow sand with a medicinal hoe. Although this is a valley of sand dunes, it is still yellow sand. Such valleys are not uncommon. Is there really water underneath? Bai Shan and the others were also suspicious, but they had nothing to do. Since Man Bao said that he felt there was water here, let's take a look. So the 6 people pulled the sand to one side, exposing the gravel layer below, and then digging with a small hoe, pulling the soil out and stacking it aside. Man Bao hoed for a while, and when he felt tired, he handed it over to Bai Shan, and Bai Shan relayed, because he thought that he might have to dig very deep, he hoed a large piece to the side so that he could dig down for a while. Bai Erlang and Lu Huan both went to the relay, and Yin he finally hoed twice out of curiosity. He felt that the task of pushing the dirt they had piled up was suitable for him, so he gave the hoe to Zhou Liru. "It's her turn." Zhou Liru jumped out of the pit, and as soon as he went down with his hoe, a stream of water sprayed out, directly at her face. Zhou Li closed his eyes subconsciously, and then his ears were filled with cheering screams from everyone. When she opened her eyes, she wiped the sand on her face, looked at her front placket, and then looked at the water that shot out. After a while, a lot of water accumulated at the bottom of the pit, and her shoes, socks, and pant legs were all washed away. Wet. Manbao and the others were going to throw the hoed soil on top, so they also stood at the bottom of the pit and were also wet. But they are also excited. A few people didn't go up, just pulled up the hem of the clothes and tied it to the waistband of the trousers, and rolled up the trousers to continue digging, open the hole a little more. Now the water flow has become smaller, but the water still bubbles up from below like a mountain spring. A few people were working excitedly at the bottom of the pit, and the heavy rain standing beside them opened their mouths in shock, only to close their mouths after a long while, exclaiming, "Did the water really come out?" Daji was only shocked for a moment, then turned his head and ordered a guard, "Go back and tell them that water has been dug up here, and ask them to bring the water car over to fill it up." Yes. When Nikanjun and the others arrived in a hurry, what they saw was a pit of water and a few people laughing in the water. When he was angry, he immediately carried them up, and then asked the soldiers to go under the tree to bring a few big stones and block the water outlet they had made. Then he rolled up his trousers and went down to clean the bottom of the pit and drain the water. Scoop it out, and then clean up the dirt at the bottom of the pit. picked up a bucket of small stones from the river ditch and spread it at the bottom of the pit. After laying it, step on it firmly, and then spread the stones on all sides of the pit. Then slowly pick up a large stone and let the water in it come out. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2252. The water that comes out is clear, but the bottom of the pit will be a little turbid, but slowly the water will become clear, and the stones at the bottom of the pit can be seen clearly. Totally different. A few people in full treasure. They scratched their heads in a guilty conscience and quietly hid. Nikanjun just remembered to praise them, picked up the relationship between superiors and subordinates. Master Joe is really amazing, he really dug out water, ha 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 ha. It was only then that Man Bao remembered that she was the chief officer. There was absolutely no need to feel guilty, so he came back and accepted Nikanjun's compliments with a smile, and then squatted by the side to watch the pits gradually increase and the clear water said, should we be stationed here? Nikanjun looked around and shook his head, still be stationed on the other side of the river ditch. There is a sandy land there, it is also very spacious, and the leeward wind is better than here. So this can only be used as a water point, but the two sides are not very far, and they have a car, so there is no need to worry. Because the water was dug up by their own hands, the 6 of them were very excited, so as soon as the water truck arrived, they rolled up their sleeves and planned to fetch a few buckets of water themselves. Mr. Zhuang trotted over on a horse and saw them all mixed with mud and water. He couldn't help but get angry. Why don't you clean it up quickly? What if you get sick? Man Bao pointed to the sun on the horizon and said, Sir, it's summer now, it's hot, we will dry it as soon as we hang it, and only the trouser legs are wet, but the clothes are not wet. Mr. Zhuang, do you think you are clothes drying poles? After drying them, go and change them quickly. Man Bao twisted and said frankly, Sir, we want to take a bath. Mr. Zhuang couldn't help but put his eyes on the water in the pit, and he pondered, there may not be enough firewood. Man Bao said, the sun is so big, you can wash in cold water, you can just boil water for your husband and Yin. Heavy Rain glanced at them and felt that they were wasting water too much. Didn't they just take a bath for 11 days? It is normal for them not to take a bath for 3 or 5 months. However, he still gave a suggestion, saying, pick up that kind of scalding stone on the edge of the river and put it in the water to scald it. Although it won't make the water hot, it can also make the water less cold. Man Bao felt that this was a good idea, so they dashed with wooden barrels to look for stones, and then the water they poured settled down and left to dry in the sun. The guards found a place to set up a bathing place for them. Not only them, but even Nikanjun and the soldiers couldn't help scratching their backs. Seeing that the water in the puddle was still bubbling out, they simply hit the ground. Water to clean up. In order to make it come out of the water faster, Nikanjun also removed the other 2 stones, and the 3 springs in the puddle poofed out. When the moon was bright and the stars faded, all the talents were washed, and Man Bao pulled up his dry hair and smelled the fragrance. Then he jumped off the carriage and ran towards the fire. Mr. Zhuang and the others were sitting around a fire, and he was making them pancakes by the fire. The aroma that Man Bao could smell came from the pancakes. Bai Shan was faster than her. When he saw her coming, he divided the cake in his hand into 2 and gave her half. Man Bao took it, sat down next to him, looked around and asked, Bai are they okay? Good morning, they will go to the puddle to see Jing Er. Man Bao took a bite of the cake. There was a little meat in the cake. It was fragrant and crunchy. She was overjoyed and asked, have you filled up all the water you need? Bai Shan nodded. Heavy Rain said that after 2 or 3 days' walk, we can reach Lop Nur. There is not only water there, but also the town. We can rest there for a day and add some fresh water. Man Bao, who was thinking about going to collect some water at night, immediately dismissed the idea, looked at the heavy rain opposite and asked, "What town is there?" The heavy rain said lazily, "What kind of city is it? It's just a group of people living together, it doesn't even have a name, but there used to be an ancient city in the north, but now there are only dilapidated houses and walls, and the waterway has changed. Everyone built a house on the other side to live there, but the road to the western regions passes there. In recent years, many people have passed by there, and more people live there. It is the best for us to buy rice, noodles, and dry food. Place. He has traveled several times in the western regions, escorting the caravan there, so he is very familiar with the road, but when we get there, we can walk along the river for a few days, and we can meet water and people. It is grassland. So it will be a little easier, and after that period of time, I will enter the desert again." He said, "That is the last desert, and after that, it will be a large grassland, and there are still large fields of wheat and barley, which is the Jokan kingdom you are going to. By the way, it can no longer be called Jokan kingdom, but Angzi." Manbao sketched the journey in his mind, and exclaimed in his heart, "It's so far, your majesty really sent troops to destroy Jokan kingdom." By Shandao, the soldiers and horses were dispatched from all over Xiaohu. Hoji only brought some soldiers and horses from the capital, and not all of them set out from the capital. "That's a long way too." Bai Shan smiled. Gao Changguo provoked and neglected Dajin several times, and there were Turkic forces behind him. If His Majesty did not act to deter him, I feared that the entire Northland would not be at peace afterward. Haven't you seen that after the fall of Jokan kingdom, both the remaining Turkic forces and the Huayetubo side have become much more honest? This time, it was rumored that the emperor was not good enough to cause such chaos. When His Majesty's will was issued, I am afraid that few people would dare to take the lead. Heavy Rain couldn't help but look at them. He was really curious, so he couldn't help asking, "Is His Majesty the Emperor really okay?" Manbao glanced at him and said, "What can he do?" She said, "Not many people in the capital are sick, and the most sick people are from Xiaohu. The Emperor still lives in the palace, and smallpox can't enter the palace at all. Don't worry, he is fine, it looks like he will live another 20 to 30 years. Is no problem." The heavy rain hit him in the mouth. In fact, when I first heard the news, many brothers in the town wanted to go out and make a fortune, but the eldest brother was unwilling. He felt that they were not very short of money now, and life in the town was not bad, so there was no need to put their heads in their pants. It was on the belt, so it suppressed everyone. Now, it seems that it is right not to go. This emperor is not generous, and the officials under him are also very stingy. Heavy Rain became curious and asked, "What does the emperor look like?" Manbao can still answer this kind of gossip. As long as she doesn't ask what she shouldn't ask, she can answer, so she said, "It's very powerful, and when I'm not angry, it's very majestic. It's convincing when you look at it." Nai Kenjun couldn't help looking at her. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2253. After walking for 2 days, they saw the grass on the edge of the desert on the third day. The team cheered. Manbao looked at the car window for a long time. Bai Shan rode a horse and ran from the front with her horse in his hand. He invited her and said, "They said there are wild rabbits ahead, do you want to go hunting?" Manbao's eyes lit up, he took the bow and arrow and left the team and ran first. Daegil followed with his guards. Heavy Rain rolled his eyes and beckoned a few brothers to follow. There are really not many rabbits on the grass, but it is rare to see green, so the mood for horse racing will be much better. The land here is very hard, and the gobi and grassland are not very clear. Man Bao thought, it must be very difficult to farm here. Look, it's a river. Everyone immediately stretched their necks to look. Lan Yingying was really a river, and it was a big river. Everyone got excited and ran towards the river. It was a meandering river. There are 3 roads with traces, and everyone can't help but look at the heavy rain. Heavy Rain identified the direction and pointed to the north. It should be over there. There is also the direction of the river. Everyone ran forward in the direction of the river, and the team behind them also accelerated, and ran not far behind them. Going forward along the river, Man Bao and the others first saw sporadic grazing herdsmen and flocks of cattle and sheep, and then they saw farmland not far from the river. As soon as they saw the farmland, everyone was refreshed. The place where most people live would not be too far from the farmland. Sure enough, but after a while, everyone saw the house built by the yellow mud. There was a curl of cooking smoke rising in the air, and Man Bao subconsciously looked at it. Looking at the sun in the sky, he said strangely, "It's not too soon or too late, how come there is cooking smoke?" You said, "This is dinner." They eat twice a day. Some people drink some goat milk in the morning and eat in the afternoon, which is equivalent to eating 1 meal a day. Didn't you say that many merchants will pass by here? Heavy Rain grinned and said, "So when there is no war, they can have enough to eat in the afternoon, otherwise many people will have milk tea and make some naan cakes in the afternoon when it is not cold and war is not going on." Bai Shan pointed to the farmland by the river and asked, "Don't they grow food? The yield is very low." How did he know that the rain had never been planted before? Anyway, they are very poor, much poorer than the people in our small town. That's how they feel that the town is good everywhere, and they don't want to move their nests if they are beaten to death. While talking, their horses approached the village, so let's call it a village, because there are not many houses and not many people. People in the village found them, and then they heard shouts and cheers, and many people ran out of the house. Before they could move, the children and teenagers in the village were already running towards them. They ran to the front, put their hands together in a Buddhist salute, chatted to them, and then stretched out their hands to tug at their horses. Man Bao widened his eyes, turned his head and said to Bai Shan, "I don't understand them." Bai Shan didn't understand either, but he could see the enthusiasm and smiles on their faces, so he didn't resist, but touched Pirate Li's neck and let him follow them. The heavy rain slowly allowed them to help him lead the horse, and said, "I don't understand either, but I know they are soliciting passengers. Let's go. There are so many people in our motorcade, and this village is so small, it is estimated that every household has you have to vacate a room to live in, so you don't have to rob guests at all." Man Bao was quite curious, "Did you not live in this village when you passed by before?" "I didn't have this village at all when I left," said Yu. "It seems that this house was only built during this period." "Yeah." A few people from Manbao went to look at the yellow mud houses on both sides of the road, only to find that although it was not very good, it didn't seem to have many traces of use, and it really looked like it was newly built. Entering the entrance of the village, the adults also greeted them with smiles, all of which were Buddhist rituals. Heavy Rain said, "Jiao believes in Buddha, this area is very close to Jiao. These people may have escaped after the destruction of Jiao." For the person who gave the smile, Man Bao and the others also subconsciously smiled back, and then dismounted to return the Confucian ritual. The villagers became more enthusiastic, and they were about to enter. The crowd even quarreled. 2 sturdy women took advantage of their gender to squeeze in and hold Man Bao and Zhou Liro's horses, pointing at them. The family kept making gestures, wanting to take them home to rest. Man Bao smiled slightly, pointed to the outside of the village and said, "There are still people outside, so many people." Although the language was not clear, everyone still understood her gestures, and everyone subconsciously looked in the direction she pointed, and it happened that the carriage faintly appeared in their line of sight. The villagers' eyes widened immediately. At first, I was puzzled, why are these guests only riding horses and not even carrying luggage? But now they understand when they see the carriage, this is a caravan, it looks like a big caravan. Dear guest. As a result, the villagers became more enthusiastic. The person who had already taken the lead in grabbing Manbao and his horses did not let go, but shouted a few times later, while the person who was squeezed behind and couldn't grab them had spread their feet and ran towards the convoy. When the people who were called out of the house by them saw them, they didn't ask them the reason, they spread their feet and ran out. Manbao and the others instantly became empty, and only the people who were still holding their horses were still there. Manbao and the others were not in a hurry, so they walked slowly along the road to the village, and the one who led their horse wanted to invite them into the house to rest first, but a few refused. They didn't dare to force it, for fear that they would be snatched away, so they could only follow step by step. When the people in the convoy arrived, the talents who followed them around and came back were startled, looked at the number of people, and then looked at Joe Man and the others, and they were not in a hurry. There are so many people that they don't have to rob them to get their turn at home, and these people look like a group. The villagers enthusiastically crowded the convoy into the village, because no one can hold so many people, and there are no shops here, so everyone was stuck on the road. Finally, an old man came out and shouted to make everyone quiet, and then stepped forward to look at them, as if he was looking for the boss. Li Guanqi took the initiative to negotiate, but he did not understand Hu language, and these people could not understand Chinese. So the two pedestrians stood up, Wei Xingren translated it for them, and Manbao and a few others came up to listen curiously. Gold and silver are rarely seen here, and copper coins are rarely used. What they prefer is silk cloth and tea, which are hard currencies in the western regions. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 2254. Manager Li was also ingenious, and took out 2 pieces of silk cloth that were not very good from the luggage, which were brought with them when the 2 bandits wanted to sneak in. In order to look good, they each brought 10 pieces of cloth at that time, but unfortunately they could not do well in the show, and the quality of the silk cloth they brought was average. They were sent back to Yumen Pass, but the things were left behind and confiscated by them. Naturally, this man is their missman. Manager Li said that the 2 silk cloths were the cost of their team's accommodation in the village, and the old man pondered. The villagers stared at the old man with piercing eyes, and wanted to answer for him. There were a lot of 2 pieces of cloth, and they could replace a lot of wheat, and more highland barley. The old man shook his head, motioning for another horse. Manager Li pondered for a moment, then took out a horse and said, "You can add another one, but our master wants to live in a good place, and he wants to live together or nearby, so it's not easy to separate." The old man looked at Joe Man who was beside him and nodded in response. Manager Li smiled and knew that they probably didn't have much delicious food here, and the cooking skills might not meet the tastes of the masters, so he decided to go back and exchange silk cloth or tea for some food, vegetables, meat, etc. something for Mrs. to make. Li Guanqi took Wei Xingren and instructed the guards to arrange the people up and down. Manbao and the others followed behind to join in the fun, mainly to listen to them speak, listen to Wei Xingren's translation, and then they learned a lesson. The old man was very interested in the few people who were babbling, smiled, and after arranging the others, he led them to live at his house. He said that he is the head of the village, and the house he lives in is the best in the whole village. On the left and right sides of his house are his 2 sons, and now there are 2 other guests besides them. If they want to learn, you can learn from those 2 guests. He applauded, "That guest is very powerful. He understands everything we say." Wei Xingren, "It seems like he doesn't understand. If adults want to learn, wouldn't it be more convenient to find him?" The old man happily pushed the yard away and shouted at it, Hi monk, there are guests here. Manbao and Bai Shan looked up and looked at the people who came out of the room in shock. Zhiren was also surprised for a moment, and then laughed. It turns out that it is the donor Zhou and the donor Bai, but they are destined, please come in quickly. Although the old man could not understand Chinese, he could understand the expression and was pleasantly surprised. How many do you know? This question was directed at the eminent monk, and Zhiren smiled and said, it's an old acquaintance, these little friends are friends of the poor monk in the old place. The old man was more polite to Zhou Man and the others, and invited them into the house warmly, and then shouted at the houses on the left and right, wanting to call out the grandchildren who were still at home to make milk tea for them. It's just that most of the people in the village went to the entrance of the village to join in the fun and divide the guests, and the children were the same, so he only called out a 2-year-old baby girl who stumbled before walking. She held the threshold and cried loudly, as if calling for mother. Elder. Manbao held back a smile, went up to hold the child in his arms, took out a piece of candy from his purse, crushed it and put a little bit into her mouth. The child stopped eating the sweetness immediately. After sucking, she looked at Manbao with tears in her eyes. While feeding her candy, Manbao asks Hiren curiously, when did the master come to the western regions? Chi Ren smiled and said, it's been 2 years. Manbao was very excited, is the master returning now, or is it just here? It's the return trip now, but I heard that there are a lot of robbers on the road, so I plan to stay here for a while, and then turn to Zizhu and walk back from Izhu to the grassland. Bai Shan was startled and asked, isn't Zizhu Jiao Kang, and the master wants to go back? Zhiren explained, I came from Kyosai, and I originally wanted to take this business road and go back through Yumen Pass, but who knew that horse thieves were rampant in this section, so I decided to detour to Zizhu, and from there I found a caravan to Izhu, all the way. After arriving in Toyosu, head south. That goes too far. Zhiren looked at them and asked with a smile, why did the little friends come to the western regions? Manbao explained about the smallpox in Zizhu. Zhiren was stunned for a moment and then said, so it is, no wonder the road was stable when I came, but now it's chaotic like this. Smallpox, has Zizhu suffered a big loss? Manbao nodded. Zhiren sighed in his heart, and then he wondered, there is a recipe for treating smallpox in the western regions. I don't know where the news came from. Manbaidao, it's not a cure, it's a way to prevent acne. She said, we have already tried it. Human pox can be vaccinated, but the risk is higher. I heard that cowpox is safer, but we don't know how to vaccinate, and we can't always ask people to try it, so we want to come here. Ask for a lesson or two. Chiron was not very confident, because he had never heard of this method. Bai Shan was a little curious, has the master traveled all over the western regions? Zhiren smiled bitterly, I have traveled all over the western regions, I have a good friend, he went to Tianzu many years ago to seek the scriptures, but he has never seen him return. It just so happened that I have a lot of confusion about the Miopha Lotus Sutra. So I wanted to go back to his path, not only to solve doubts, but also to find him, but we only went to Khotan town. Little Bolu and De Bola were fighting, and Tubo was also involved, so we couldn't get through. Although there are customs clearance documents, Tubo and Xiao Bulu both believe in Buddha, but they would rather hold him than let him pass. He worked hard for half a year, but De Bolu relented and was willing to escort him there, but he regretted it temporarily, and finally sent him back to Khotan town. He also thought about borrowing troops from him and Dajin, but Khotan town was also not peaceful. Because Tubo accidentally occupied all 3 places under Khotan town when he intervened in the affairs between Xiaobolu and Dabolu, and also took all the people from the tribe to Tubo. Zhiren saw that the time was not right, and things could no longer be violated, so he quietly left Khotan town with his apprentice, and crossed Kyosai to return to the Central Plains. It's just that many people in the western regions believe in Buddhism, especially in Jiao Kang. No, it's Zizhu now, especially in this region. From the nobles to the poor, they all worship Buddha. After a while, when they got here, they encountered a robbery by horse thieves. Ji Ren looked at Zhou Man, pondered for a moment, and said, "The poor monk has something to ask the patron of Zhou." Man Bao hurriedly said, "Master, please speak." Zhiren got up and invited her to the guest room to have a look. Ji Yan was injured, which was one of the important reasons why he decided to go to Zizhu. The horse thieves on this road were too cruel. Jihan lay on the bed, Man Bao lifted the quilt and glanced at his wound. A huge wound from the shoulder to the waist was on the back, which had been treated, and some cyan medicinal herbs were applied on it. Man Bao inhaled. The nose, smelling is the medicine to stop the bleeding, but it should be the reason for the lack of medicine, and the wound has worsened. Ji Ren said, "This is a knife wound. There is also an arrow wound on his leg. The arrow is poisoned, but I don't know what the poison is. I tried to detoxify it, but it couldn't work, so there is Lao Zhou as a benefactor. See you at 6 p.m.